Right, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending the meeting. Democratic Service Committee. Can I start with apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Sheila Woodhouse, Peter Clark, Dave Jones and Matt Feekins.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest.
As and when, Chair.
Right, thank you. Right, 3, information independent representation panel of Wales draft report. John?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just attached for information, most of the members will have already seen the report that we've circulated to you by email. We used to take the report to council because it needed council decision on some of the bandings and how we would appropriate some of the money to members. None of that's needed anymore, but it's really just closing the loop and bringing it back to the committee now. Councillor Evans and I are attending a session with the remuneration panel tomorrow, so this meeting's a little bit out of timing really with where that is. Some of the key changes in the report, really the biggest one is obviously the big uplift in members' salaries. The argument behind it is that members' pay has not been inflated with inflation for a number of years, and given that we've got our local elections next year, it's trying to entice candidates to come forward and pay them appropriately for their role. In terms of other elements of the report, there's no real significant changes there, so it's really for information, but happy to take any questions or any points that members want the chair and I to put towards the remuneration panel at our meeting tomorrow. So over to you members if you've got any comments.
Tony, was you indicating?
Yeah, yes, Chair. My hand's up now. Yeah, thank you, John. Yes, we all received the report, and if members remember, Councillor Greenan made some comments about the report on council last week to encourage prospective councillors and then councillors at the time to make sure they claim what they're entitled to do in terms of support for families and things like that. At this point in time, I don't think there's any real need for us as councillors to comment because we may not be there next year. But one thing I would like to make a note of, I don't think it's appropriate for officers to make comment on a draft report as were made on some emails. I believe that it is a bit wider for the councillors next year to. I know the council are going to move it forward. We've got to move it forward, but for council next year, whether they independently, personally want to accept certain aspects of it. So I was a bit concerned about a comment from an officer about the budgetary effectives might have on the council's budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Jamie. Jamie?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. I got 2 questions or points, I suppose, really. The first is, now, excuse my ignorance on this, but our salaries, does that come out of our final settlement from Welsh Government, or is there a separate budget for that? And really, I suppose the question I got is, how can the panel justify such a large uplift in basic salaries to previous years? If that could be asked tomorrow and an explanation given it, that would be great. Thank you very much. Although it's not to say I'm against it or in favour of it in principle. It's just it's been £500 over the last 3 or 4 years, and this is a £2,500 jump, I think it is, and it's and in these times of difficulties and stuff like that with what's going on, just if they could justify that, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thanks, Councillor Jack. In terms of the budgetary requirements, it comes under the council's budget as a whole. So whatever funding arrangements we get in, we've got to find that money from within the existing pots that we've got available and allocated to our budgets. We always allocate a little bit extra to the members' salaries because of you can have the fluctuations in the cabinet position. So if at any point the leader wants to change the cabinet from, I can't remember, we've got 8 at the minute, they can go up to 9 or 10 members. We need to pay those members appropriately, so we need some flexibility in it. But yeah, it's about £150,000 budget pressure that we're looking at for next year, based on what these these new payments will be, plus the additional 3 councillors that we're going to have as well after the election soon coming in as well. So quite hefty, but we'll obviously be budgeting for that now and moving it forward. And in terms of our session tomorrow, I think most of the questions will be around what the justification is for the uplift. So if members are happy, I'll probably just send an email around after the session just to explain the logic behind it and just to give it some background. And then we can obviously look at whether there's a more formal response that as a committee perhaps we want to put in.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, John.
Tony?
Yeah, just come back in quickly, Chair. I think if you read the report, there is justification in the report for the decision they've come to, because over the last 10 years there's been some years where there's been no increase, but some other increases didn't follow the pattern of inflation and not what for public service staff in total. So I think there's a reflection this year that yes, it does indicate what Jamie's talking about, but had there been a balanced position year on year, I don't think it would have been a big jump this year, quite honestly. Thank you.
Any other questions? John? Oh, sorry. Joanne?
Thank you. It's a comment really rather than a question. Obviously, we are now all going out and trying to encourage more people to stand for council. And one of the things we've often discussed as a council and on this committee is the fact that we want people who are of working age to apply. So that it is more reflective of our entire demographic. And that means people who are not they haven't got a large nest egg sitting by, or maybe they're just topping up their retirement income as well. So this does actually need to be a councillor and put in the proper amount of hours, which I know many people do. It really should be a properly paid professional part-time job. And that's really important, I feel, that we actually do make sure that that's how we actually put forward our views in terms of this council. And that if we want to attract people who are good and who are competent, they do need to actually be paid a good salary to do that work as well. So we've often discussed it, and I still think that this now finally catching up with inflation is definitely the way that we should actually have done this before. So I'm firmly in favour.
Right, thank you, Joanne. Who? Jamie?
Thank you, Chair. I think I should declare an interest here because this is the council salary is my only income at the moment, so I don't have a job to fall back onto. But what Tony said, I agree with that. But with taking back with the step down in the universal credit and the increase in gas prices and everything else, the general cost of living crisis that we're facing at the moment is just, I would just like an explanation from them how they think it's viable, really. So that's the point I was coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Right.
Chair, could I just applaud Jamie for coming in there. I don't personally think he needs to declare an interest, because if this is just what Joanne Watkins has said, to attract people of that calibre. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no need for a declaration of interest because it's not us making the decision.
No,
it's the remuneration panel making the recommendations as an independent body for the whole of Wales, and then it'll be up to individual members to decide whether they want to take that full element, whether they want to forego some of it. It'll be up to them anyway, but the maximum recoverable amount is set by them, not us. So it's not us making a decision on it. So no need for that. So yeah, I think we've got a couple of differences, not necessarily differences of opinion, but a couple of different strands to it. And I think clarity from the remuneration panel meeting tomorrow, which I can circulate to everybody after the meeting, which could then, I'll work with the chair, decide if there's a response that we want to put in as a council. But if there's too many different views, then I'll leave it up to individual members to respond off the back of that. But I think let's see what comes out of tomorrow. I'll share that with everybody and we'll go from there.
You happy with that, members?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Right. I'll go on to item 4 now. Members ICT options, survey responses.
Thank you, Chair. So at the last meeting of the committee, we looked at sending a survey around to all members to see what it is they want their council devices to do for them, how they use it, and what's going to be the most appropriate devices going forward now for the next term of the council. The responses to the survey are attached at the appendix, just so you can see the information. Response wasn't massive, but it does give a bit of a reflection, and nothing surprising or nothing stood out really that we weren't expecting to come in. We've got Kyle with us from the digital team as well, so he can help with any questions that might come up. But the two options that have come forward as the best options for you potentially are the latest versions of the Surface Pro, which the Surface Pro is the device you've got now. I think you've got a Surface Pro 4, so it shows how much it's come on since you had those devices in 2017. It is a bigger screen than the ones you've got. It's moved up to a 13-inch from a 12-inch. It's still light. It's got the touchscreen element to it. It's got good enough performance. We think that'll last you the term of the council, which is key. You know, we haven't had to replace many of your devices now in term, which is good, and we're getting our money's worth out of it from the investment right from the outset. Some of the connections, however, on those new Surface Pros have changed. So some of the mice and keyboards and things you plug into it might be different. But on the whole, I think the Surface Pro is a suitable option for you. Some members, though, have come back saying, well, most of the responses to the survey said that members would prefer a laptop rather than a tablet, which is what the Surface Pro is. So an option there is the Microsoft Surface Go. You've got links to the devices there in the report, so you can go and have a look at them just to see what you think about it. However, on that Surface Go, the screen is a bit smaller, 12.4 inches, so it's smaller than the new Surface Pro screens, but probably about the same size as the ones you've got now. Some of the capabilities of the device isn't quite so strong, but it has got lots of connections on it, and obviously there's a price difference there between the two. In the survey responses, many members said that they'd like a second screen, so I think by default, just the way we're going now, with online meetings, a 5.5-hour council meeting on Thursday, you should be having a separate screen for your meetings if you want to use a separate screen. And I think by default we'll be offering that to all members who want one from the next term of council, just because of how reliant we are now on some of the digital platforms for our meetings. The only concerns I've got with the laptop device is the Surface Go laptop anyway, is that some of the performance in it might not suggest that if Teams, for example, rolled out a load of new updates, would those devices be able to cope during the 5-year term? I'm not sure it would. We'd have to wait and see how much performance it would take and how much it would use. At the minute, it would work fine, but would it be okay for the 5 years? We're not sure. The other option, which I haven't included in the report, would just be a normal small laptop, like the one I've got in front of me here, which we can upgrade during the term of the council, but it's not a touch screen. It's not the latest technology necessarily that like the Surface Pros that you've got now. So with that in mind, I think it's over to you. You can see the survey responses we've got. One of the options as well we were asked to look at last time was, should we offer different devices to different members depending on their preference? I'm not against it, but again, the difficulty for me is I don't know who of you will be back next term and who won't. You might have a preference, but the person who might take over your seat has a different preference. So preempting what's going to happen is difficult, but we can buy in some of one type, some of another, and dish those out. Again, another factor to consider in all this is the current procurement processes for getting new devices. There's a shortage worldwide of equipment at the minute, so ordering 2 separate devices, we might get the one type in, but what if we don't get the other type? We need to order them all by the end of this year at least, to make sure that we get them in for May and set up for May. So another factor you need to consider there is 2 different devices gonna cause more issues, and our members then going to use them in different ways. So helping and mentoring someone is going to become a bit more difficult as well, because they'll be doing the same thing but differently on different devices. So open up to the floor really, if anyone's got questions, comments on the report, on the options, willing to hear them.
Joanne?
Thank you very much. So I've read the report and I am one of the survey responses. So you've already seen my response directly. Honestly, I think we should go for the spec, which actually will last the longest amount of time. So if we've got something which we think can last a full 5 years, then it makes a lot more financial sense for the council to buy that one, rather than something which then all of our systems may not work properly and then we have to do an upgrade in the middle of term. That would actually be really, really disruptive as well, because people then would have to learn a whole new piece of kit. I know sometimes it can be a bit frustrating to have the touch screen, but I've generally found it really useful and practical. And I love how lightweight this Surface is. So if the Surface Go could be an even bigger screen, if we can have the extra screen as well, so that we can then have 2 screens operating when we're having to do remote meetings. I really feel that we should just try and do the most sensible, buy one piece of kit that hopefully will last for the entire 5-year term, and that would make the most financial sense and hopefully the most practical sense in terms of people learning it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. Anybody else?
Christopher.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for that report. I was just thinking, as you mentioned earlier, not many councillors have actually submitted that survey, which is a little disappointing to you, I imagine. But can we safely assume that all of the councillors are happy with what they've got? Or have you had any other feedback, more sort of face-to-face feedback, or
No, I think
other than the survey?
No, I think on the whole, members are quite happy with the devices, to be honest, Councillor Edwards. Some aren't, some don't like the keyboard, or they just don't like the way it is. They prefer, some prefer a laptop to a tablet type device, but essentially they do exactly the same job. Some of the responses to the survey saying, you know, we want a bigger screen, but we want a lightweight device. Well, unfortunately, they don't come hand in hand. If you want a bigger screen, the device, that adds weight to the device as a whole. It generally comes then with more connections that all add weight to it. So it's a striking a balance. I think in 2017, it was the first time we sort of said, right, everybody's having this one bit of kit from the outset, and it's going to last everybody for the full term. And everybody's using exactly the same device in exactly the same way. For the majority, that's worked really well, because for a training piece for us and a support exercise, with us being the first point of contact for IT issues, we know exactly what bit of kit that council is using, we know how to operate it, and we know how they are operating it as well. Moving to different types of devices amongst members is going to make that even more tricky and slow down the support we can offer. So, but on the whole, members have been happy with the Surface Pros, but 1 or 2 just don't like that device.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Christopher.
Martin.
Martin?
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you for the report. I have to say I'd never used a Surface Pro till I became a councillor. Seems like an eternity ago now, and I think they're great. They're lightweight, they give a very clear picture, the sound is good, but perhaps at a more practical level, because we've all got them, when we've had difficulties, and certainly when I first started using it, there were things I'd never seen before. People in democratic services like Nicola and you, John, you were there at the end of the phone, and because we were all using the same kit, you were able to talk us through difficulties that we might have had. And I should imagine that would be a lot more difficult if you had every member with their own kit that was different. One problem with the new statutory requirement on the local authority to make it possible for members to attend meetings virtually is that you do need 2 screens. It's great seeing your handsome faces on screen now, but while they're there in their full glory, I haven't got the agenda or minutes in front of me, and I need to swap screen or have 2 screens. And this is potentially a difficulty if we go into fully abide with the law and yet still be able to see each other if we are in a remote meeting. So that's the difficulty generally, I think, but I would certainly give my support to a further 5 years of what we've got now. I think it fits the bill perfectly.
Thank you, Martin.
Can I just come back on Martin's point there about seeing and having the agenda and everything else? And I think that's why we'll take the approach at the next election that every member will be offered that spare screen. Some might not have the space at home that they want to keep another screen next to them, which is why we have to make a choice for the individual members. And it's just a training piece then for us in terms of how you can extend the screen from your computer to the screen on the side. So for example, in a council on Thursday, I had the Teams up on the side on my laptop, and then the agenda and my emails up on a screen on the side. And it's just a simple training piece for us to work that through with you, but it will make that process a lot easier.
Oh, Martin? Tony, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, John. Yeah, good report. I'm comfortable with the Surface Pro. I've had very few difficulties with it. I'm happy with the always on, although that did me cause concern when they wiped all my stuff off my screen, which I was a bit annoyed at. I always use an iPad for the agendas on the side. Yes, it's easy to flip. It's easy to flip screens, but sometimes you suddenly switch your screen off, you've lost everything, and you've got to start again. One concern I got is, okay, maybe I'm a bit of a nerd, I don't know, but some facilities I like to be able to use the Surface Pro for, but they're quite restricted on SRS. I did, before it was upgraded about a month or so ago, or 2 months ago, or whatever they did to it, I used to have direct access to Zoom and all sorts of things, but no, I'm having difficulty really getting Zoom to understand what I'm on about. So there seems to be a restrictive policy from SRS allowing us to have as our computer sort of thing. It's only usable for one thing, and I'd like to see a little bit more flexibility in us being able to do it, or able to use the Surface Pro with that level of flexibility in there, whilst I understand there are security issues. Another one I've noticed, I don't know whether you've noticed it, I think the batteries, I'm not sure the batteries are as good as they ought to be. I'm down to hour and 20 minutes now, and it's gone 40 minutes since I've been in the last short period of time. So the batteries don't seem to be as robust as they ought to be. Really, I'm quite content with the Surface Pro. I'm quite content with some of the facilities in there. And I do know that some members have extreme difficulty even connecting up sometimes. But I'd like to have more flexibility to use it myself to put things on, but I'm restricted by SRS and they don't want me to do it, that's a bit of a bugbear as far as I'm concerned. So maybe I'm a nerd, I don't know. Thank you, Chair.
I think the big change in the last sort of couple of months anyway, Tony, is that the new latest Windows update has come out, and that's added some extra restrictions around, or it's allowed SRS, I think, extra flexibility in what apps you can access and not, and it's kind of taken us a step back a little bit in terms of we've got to go through and get access to these things again. But again, perhaps if I don't know you can't access something, then I can't get SRS to unlock it for you, so you can always come through me. Kyle's here, I might be able to.
What they've done, John, when they upgraded me to always on, which I think is a good thing, they allowed me to get into Zoom, but at times it just beats me. I lose it, so I got to go back to my iPad, and I'd like to have that facility. It's a bigger screen than my iPad, but yes, I think they've created something which is not advantageous for us. I don't know, maybe the other 44 members don't agree with me, or 42 members at the moment. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and John. Thank you for your comments, Tony. The only thing I'd say to that is that I think Monmouthshire are probably one of the most flexible councils in South Wales in terms of what we allow and what we don't allow. One of our policies in the Digital Programme Office is that we want people to be able to do their job, the tools to do their job. And I know that other councils have totally banned things like Zoom and GoToMeetings, even to get through the browser, and that's purely a cybersecurity and data protection decision and information governance decision. We've been a little more lenient in that we are allowing things like Zoom meetings through the browser. So I know it can be a little annoying at times, but I think Zoom tried to make you use their desktop app. So what will happen now, which I've noticed, is you'll open a Zoom meeting, it'll go to the browser, it'll ask you to open up the desktop version. If you say, I can't do it, or it's something along those lines, it'll then give you the option to view it through the browser instead. If you do have any difficulty with that, we have these sorts of things through to the Digital Programme Office all the time. If you do have any difficulties, either contact the Democratic Services team or Digital Programme Office, and we'll happily have a look at that for you. So I think the reason we restrict some things, like I said, is due to the cybersecurity, and we know across the country through the pandemic there was instances where councils had serious breaches on meetings and stuff like that, where there was meetings were hijacked and that sort of thing. So yeah, let us know if you need any further support on that one.
Tony, do you want to come back in?
No, my phone was answering my phone then. No, the answer machine's come on. No, it's a bit frustrating at times. I understand what Kyle's on about on the Zoom. I've tried to get, well, I was at one meeting with Dave where I tried to get into the Zoom, sends you to the browser, and then you get lost into the space somewhere. By the time you try and get anywhere near sorted, you've lost everything. No, I find it a bit frustrating when like I can't use the computer like I'd like to use it to, like I'd like to use it for. Some members just use it for meetings, and I can see that on what they've got on the screen. Yes, I'll leave it like that.
I think what I'll ask Tony and all members really then is if you can send through to me the apps or programs that you want to use on your device, we can go away, look at whether our security policies will allow us to use that, or maybe, and then we can come back to you and tell you why you can't access it, for example. But we can also then look to build them into the standard builds that these new devices are going to have. So we can tick them off now, get the security checks done, and when you get your new Surface Pros from May, we can make sure they're already built.
I'll be there, will I? I'll be there.
Well, who knows? Who knows? But if you want access to stuff, you need to tell us.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
You can look at it and explore it then.
Because there are lots of tools on you which you could use. You get into the Mon site. You've got Mon Maps, everything. You can do all sorts of things on there. They're fine. I use them not frequently, but I do use them, and they're very useful. It's just those little things on the side that it irritates. And I've got to go to switch this off and go to an iPad, for example.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Tony. Anybody else? Jamie?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate what Joe Watkins said earlier about going for the piece of kit that looks more likely to last the 5 years. I think it would be the cheaper option for the authority. It's also a bigger screen as well than what we've got. I don't tend to use my Surface Pro for anything other than county council business, emails, agendas and things like that. But where Tony's coming from, I get that some people do tend to use it as their personal laptop, if you like, for want of a better phrase, and it is quite restrictive. I have noticed myself some members can change their wallpaper and personalize the wallpaper themselves. I'm not able to do that on mine. It's not a big issue. It's just something that I've noticed. Sometimes there are things in the App Store, some apps that I can't download. Sometimes I can't even open the App Store. It just says
yeah, you stopped.
Yeah, but that's I tried it just now and it's fine. You know, so it's like intermittent. But that doesn't, to me, that's because I've got my own personal kit at home anyway. But I do know that some members would like to use the Pro for all their everyday internet activity, if you like. It's disappointing that only a quarter of the councillors did respond to the survey. And I appreciate that some are retiring. Some may think that they might not get elected or anything like that, but a more wider snapshot of people's preferences, I suppose, and issues would have been more helpful, should we say. But then this committee, or you send out surveys on behalf of this committee, and they're never very well responded. So I mean, it's just an ongoing thing, isn't it? It's just an issue. But I think the best way for, if we could offer the tablet or the laptop as an option, I think that would be the best route for us to go. But because we need to get a minimum of 46 devices in, we need to place that order early. I can't justify us saying, yes, let's order 92, 46 of each, just in case. So I would go with the Surface Pro 8 myself, because it has a better chance of lasting 5 years without the need to be upgraded or anything like that. So, and thank you for the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'll come into that if you want.
Just one thing, I don't use the Surface Pro for my personal emails. I got Gavo emails on there and Monmouthshire. I don't put my personal, don't put my personal stuff on there.
Good. Just in response, Chair, if you don't mind, to Jamie's comments. Thank you for that, Jamie. The only thing I'd say, so linking into John's point earlier, we have had a major Windows upgrade across the authority to, it's called 20H2, and everyone, as part of that policy, cannot change their wallpaper. Now, that's something that I'm looking to change. It's something that I was. It's some feedback that we've had from staff, actually. Working from home, it can be isolating at times if you're not working in Teams regularly or having Teams meetings. So they said it would be nice if I could put a picture of my dog on there, or some family or whatever. So it's something that's going to be changing soon. So keep hold of that one. In terms of the App Store, because it's a corporately managed business device, we do have to control what's available in the App Store. So if you think there's something in there that might be useful for a business purpose, or potentially even for a personal purpose, again, email it through to Digital Programme Office and we can do a software review on that, and potentially it could be released as an available app for people. Okay. You're absolutely right when you say we need to order early. Again, coming back to John's point, there is a global shortage. We're actually in a really bad position corporately at the moment in terms of laptops. There's still new starts coming through. There's people needing to replace their laptops, and we're literally at the point where we're begging service areas in our team to hand back old devices so we can repurpose them temporarily whilst we wait for new ones. So it's deeply important that we get that order in early when we've made a decision as part of this report. And just emphasising, you said about feeding back and the survey responses. It's really important whether you're going to be going forward into the next term or not. You have had these devices and the training for a number of years now. We really appreciate your feedback on this. So if you haven't responded to the survey already, I don't think it's too late, if I'm right in saying, John. So, put them forward, and it's only going to give us further, comments to go on when placing this order.
Okay, thanks. If I could just come back, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes. I hadn't used the Surface Pro until I became a councillor as well, and I have to say, I quite like it. There were a few things that still baffle me today, but I don't use the touchscreen for some unknown reason. Even though I have tablets at home, I don't use the touchscreen. I quite like the idea of the keyboard and the fact that we can plug in a mouse at the moment, and I appreciate that maybe the next generations that would be difficult. My question, Microsoft have just released Windows 11. So do you know if our tablets will be updated to Windows 11, or are we going to wait until the new kit comes in?
So yeah, so 20H2 is the current version that we're on. Windows 11, because it's in sort of an early release phase, it's not something that business, corporate wise, we'd be looking to adopt at this stage, only because at this stage the software can still be quite buggy. Definitely in I would say in the next 5 years for sure, we will be looking to upgrade to that. And given the fact that you'll be getting the latest version of the Surface Pro, it will definitely be upgradable to Windows 11 when that becomes corporately available.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, cheers, Jamie.
Sorry, Chair. Probably some of the anomalies as well you're experiencing, Councillor Treharne, is because some of the members' laptops haven't been upgraded yet to that new version of Windows that Kyle just mentioned. And the reason why we're delaying on necessarily moving you all over to it is because some members are going to just need more help than others in doing it. I had to get help from SRS to do it because mine crashed when I was doing it. So if I need help, some of our members are certainly going to need their hand holding through it. So we're trying to delay that really for as long as possible. And maybe it'll just be that these new devices get rolled out with that latest software on, which will bring everybody then back to the same position. But again, I'll bring it back to letting me know what services and apps you want to use, because if you remember in 2017, when you picked up your Surface Pros, they were already preloaded with ModGov on them for you to access all your agendas and papers. Now, since 2017 and now there's a newer version of the app that's come out that's a lot better. But as you say, Councillor Treharne, sometimes getting to the App Store to actually download it can be hit and miss, which is why I haven't pushed it out. But all those new devices are going to go out with the latest versions of all the software on it that we can approve, including the ModGov one. So again, let me know what it is you want them to do. We'll look at it with Kyle and the digital team. And if you can't answer them, we'll explain it. If you can, then it makes sense for us to put it in that build as soon as possible to give you all you need to get on with your roles.
Excellent. Thank you, John. As always, detailed responses from both of you. Thank you.
Can I just finally end very quickly on saying thank you again for those who responded. Keep a close eye out, and we want to gather as much feedback on the next stage as well, which will be looking at if there's any specific training that you will want, should you be re-elected. We did quite a comprehensive training plan last time from a digital perspective. If there's anything that you feel that is missing currently, please put it in that survey form when that eventually comes around in time.
Thank you.
Nobody else. Right, if that did.
So if I could just sum that up, Chair, then I think the decision really coming from everybody here is that we purchase Surface Pros for all the councillors, all 46 councillors, the latest versions of the Surface Pro, and we work on getting those builds right from the start, and we don't mix and match different devices.
That's right.
Anybody objecting to that?
Second screen.
I'll take that as a yes. So that's how we'll proceed, and we'll obviously look at those second screens as well, and any extra peripheral devices that you're going to need during the next term.
Thumbs up, Martin. Right.
Sounds fine to me, Dave. Yeah.
All right, fine. Right, then we'll go on to item 5, Council Chamber verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give everybody sort of an update progress on where we are with the refurbishments going on in the council chamber. The work started to refurb the microphones, the way everything was interacting, the way everything integrated, so integrating Teams into the space, improving on some of the problems that we've had previously, like how the sound gets around the room and can members hear everybody. We've got to cater for another 3 councillors for next May, so we've had to do some refurbishments on the space there to cater for those. But work started on the chamber about 2 weeks ago. All the hard work's in, all the new microphones are in place, the extra furnishings are all done, and hopefully the team will be finishing up roughly towards the end of this week. We've got next week in as a bit of a buffer, just in case, really, the way these big projects go, we just wanted to give ourselves another bit of space. And then myself and the team will be getting training on all the new equipment then the week following that. I think it's important to give you an update of what we're looking at in terms of how we're going to phase back in meetings. There is cabinet on the 1st of December, but I think that's too close for me in terms of the handover from our installers to the training for us to then suddenly throw us into a cabinet meeting. We'll want to run some dummy sessions as well, like we did when we rolled out fully remote meetings. We held a couple of members seminars on things just to test the equipment out. We'll be doing it in reverse, essentially, by having some members in the chamber, some members and officers remoting in and just testing all that equipment and making sure everybody's happy with it. But we'll have a view to fully start using the chamber and full hybrid meetings then. From cabinet on the 15th of December and council on the 16th of December. Obviously, that's all still pending any decisions taken outside the council in terms of COVID and any restrictions we have on the building. But if it's in today's climate, on today's rules, then we'll be looking to have a certain number of members back in the chamber on the 16th of December. Like I say, the equipment in there will integrate Teams properly into the chamber. It won't be a camera on the side of the room and a microphone on the floor. It's fully interactive in terms of when you press a microphone, you get sent to Teams and you will display on that person's device when they're outside the room. Similarly, we've got bigger screens in there to cater for more detailed planning applications. I know members have complained before they can't see what's actually on the screen, so we've made the screens very big. You'll be able to see up to 9-10 people on there on the screen at one time. There won't be a need to turn the cameras off like there is in today's meeting, because we won't be using a Teams live event. It'll just be a normal Teams meeting. What that allows us to do as well is use some of the more functionality within Teams, because a lot of the functionality in a normal Teams meeting isn't actually transferred over to a live event, so we're restricted on a lot of the things that we can do there. That will all be brought in, and we're exploring ways now already of new apps that we might be able to access to allow us to make the meeting experience better. So yeah, I think for us it's a positive. We're ahead of the game, particularly in terms of getting the equipment in. Like we said earlier on, same with IT. There's procurement issues everywhere. It's not just on IT, it's on all types of equipment, but we've been able to get all the parts in that we need. We'll have it up and running by the end of the month, and we'll be looking to obviously do some training sessions with you when you come back in, because it will look and feel a lot different to what it did before. But hopefully soon you'll all be able to get back in the chamber and have a proper hybrid meeting with a large number in the room. So really just any questions from members, but I wanted to give you that update.
I did have a look around before I came in here today with John, and I was very impressed with what we have in there. I think it's going to be a big improvement, and it'll stop members thinking or into actions with, oh, I can't hear that chair, I can't hear that chair, what did they say over their chair? I think this system is going to be great.
Kept my seat, you, Nick. You kept my seat, have you?
Oh, no, I might put you on the other side of the room now.
Yeah.
Oh, God help us, God help us.
Yeah. Martin.
Oh, my.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a technical question. For the last 5 years, the cameras in the chamber have made me look quite ugly. Will that be addressed under the new system?
The budget didn't extend to that, sorry, Martin.
Makeup room.
Sorry, Chair. Levity isn't normally allowed. I know. I apologise.
No.
Have a makeup room, Martin.
Is anybody else got any questions for John on the chamber? No? Right. The next item is minutes to the next meeting, but before we go on to that,
Good.
I've had quite a few phone calls about the meeting, council meeting last week, on how the voting went, and I spoke to John about this, and they have done some investigations on Matt's, the monitor officer's concerns, and I'm going to be honest with you, when I was told what they can do, I was very impressed with that, for the simple reason they can, the Democratic Services can say who was in the meeting, who left the meeting, where they voted, if they voted, and I think you all should have had an email this afternoon from the monitor officer. If you haven't, you will do. But I will hand over now to John on that one. Oh, the monitor officer's in.
Thank you, Chair. When I'm not going to get drawn in the details yet. We haven't got all that information, and like Councillor Evans said, there's lots of data and analysis that gets pulled through after a meeting, and reports that we've got to wade through to look to find anything. So every time, for example, a member of the public joins a live stream, it gets logged. So you can imagine how big a log is when we've got 43 of our councillors interacting for a 5.5 hour meeting. But I think the thing as a Democratic Services Committee we need to be clear on is that we're happy with the checks and balances and the processes that we've put in place to allow councillors to vote in remote and hybrid meetings, and I think we have. I think for clarity, it's worth noting that currently the law on who can be in a meeting or how a member should be in a meeting is that you need to be heard, and other members need to hear you within that meeting. From May, that will move to be seen and be heard. So things like dialing in by telephone from May just won't be an option. You'll need to be seen and heard. Obviously, hear and be heard offers up other ways of doing it as well in terms of that telephone interaction. So someone would be able to vote if they were joining the meeting via just telephone, but if they were just watching a live stream, there's not that two-way interactive communication, and members wouldn't be allowed to vote in those circumstances. Again, going back to what I just said about the restrictions of using a Teams live event and members having to turn their cameras off, that doesn't help us. I don't think it's something we have to do because technology demands it. But it would be much better for me, for example, now to be able to see all your cameras on and be able to see you and know you're in the meeting and you're actually listening to what it is I'm saying. So moving into the chamber, that restriction will go, and cameras will be going back on during the meeting at all times, and then you know then that someone is in the meeting at all times. In terms of the sort of checks and balances and what we do in the background to make sure that our voting is accurate, is the monitoring officer and Democratic Services will just monitor the number of attendees, the number of members who are present in that meeting throughout the meeting. So even when they're dropping off, we're adjusting our total so we know what number of votes we're expected to come in. Within that chat bar, we put the abstention option as well, so that we know that members aren't having difficulty. It's adding to our total, and that's coming back to that balance that we've always got in place. If at the bottom of the chat bar as well, in for each vote is the total number of votes, so we know roughly what we're coming back to. The key thing really is that we don't have a recorded vote for every item. So if there's a clear majority and the majority of the votes are in, then what's outstanding isn't going to make a difference to the outcome of that decision. So as long as we're happy with that, then we've got everything we need to just take it forward and accept that as the decision. Where we come in and step in is either if the vote is close, within 4 votes, 5 votes, something like that, and we've got 4 or 5 votes outstanding, you just go to a verbal vote, and that's your definitive vote no matter what. You can forget what's gone in the chat bar. If it's a close vote, split opinion, we need to be squeaky clean on everyone's voting preference and that everyone is in that meeting, and we would fall back on that. We have got audits afterwards. Like I say, it does take time to wade through, but we do have audits of how everyone's voted as well. And for me, I think we've got a right balance between having our audit and our checks in place compared to adding an hour onto a meeting just because we want to do a verbal vote on every item for something that's clearly going to get carried all the time. I know a lot of councils are only doing verbal votes just because they haven't worked out the technology really. They've tried to explore ways to move away from a verbal vote because it's just a headache for them during the meeting, adding the time and going through it. People unmuting, muting, etc. And I don't think that's a route we want to go down. I think we've had the technology working now for 18 months without an issue, and it's worked well for us. We've got our checks in place, and I think it works well. But it's worth understanding that position on what the process is, what we do in the background that you might not necessarily be aware of, and that we have got the audit in place that we need to make sure that our decisions are right and accurate.
Matt, do you want to come in and say anything?
Hi Chair, thanks very much. Forgive me for not being with you throughout the meeting today. Sorry, I should introduce myself. Matt Phillips, Chief Officer, People and Governance, and the Monitoring Officer. Yeah, sorry I've not been with you. I've been in another meeting, but I have been tracking this. So at the point that I heard this item come on, I've jumped across. I didn't hear what the original question was, sorry, but what I have heard is John's detailed explanation as to how the sausage is made, and like most sausages, there's probably a lot more that goes into it than you realised, and I think John's captured it really well. So if you're happy, Charles, I'll stay here. I can see Councillor Easton's got a hand up. If there's any other questions, then I'm happy to come in, but I think John set it out really clearly.
Right, thank you. Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I received I put this request to John in an email. You've responded with a long email. I come back to you with one question, which was just one question. To be eligible to vote, must a member be present for the duration of an item and not just join in for the vote? You've given me a response. Well, you can answer your response yourself. I understand your response. You're a bit concerned about the Wi-Fi connection. So I come back to a sort of supplementary thought. If you're at the beginning of the item and at the end of the item, would that constitute you being there all the time, for example?
Chair, if you're happy.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the aim, and John was just setting out in terms of what our next steps are in terms of hybrid use of the chamber, is to get us back to a position where council meetings operate in the way that they did when everyone was present in the chamber. There are rule changes, but actually, as John explained as well, as we move from hear and be heard to see and be seen, you can see how those rule changes are trying to bring us back to the point where it's effectively the same as everyone being in the chamber, so you can see each other and make sure that you are seen by others. But one of the key tweaks is now your inalienable right to join in remotely, whereas before we were limited on the numbers that were allowed to do that. So in part of the other changes, in terms of the point that Councillor Easton's referring to, is it recognises the fact that if people are going to, sorry, when I say it, the law, and it's the Local Government Elections Act 2021, it recognises that where people are joining remotely, which will continue to be a feature of how we work, that's the same with the wider working environment. It is possible for, I get it. Luckily, my children are in school at the moment, but if they come home in the next 20 minutes or so and they start putting their tablets on and what have you, my Wi-Fi connection dips a little bit, and it's possible that I would freeze for a short period of time or what have you. And so I think the guidance is going to sit around remote attendance will at least understand that it's possible that sometimes you can be in a debate and a discussion all the way through, and a technical glitch means that you might disappear for a minute or what have you and come back. I think it's analogous that with when we're in the chamber, sometimes there are debates, and they can go, debates can last an hour around a motion quite easily. And occasionally you do get someone who might need to just very, very quickly pop out and come back in again. It's always been a bit of a judgment call before, hasn't it? And I know those on the call who have been in council meetings in the chamber will have seen me, if someone comes in kind of halfway through an item because, they had an overrunning meeting or what have you, you will have seen me kind of very quietly go over to the side, say, right, grab a seat, but would you mind not voting on this item because you haven't seen quite a lot of it? But at the same time, we get those circumstances where someone, nips out, comes back in. So again, I think what the legislation and the guidance that sit around it is trying to be as analogous as possible to physical presence, which is you need to be present, you need to be seen to be present, you need to be able to participate. But there are small glitches that can come with hybrid working. That means if someone ends up, missing a minute or so in the context of a longer debate, it doesn't then make their vote unreliable. But it's like everything, it's going to be a judgment call. It's for the chair to decide. It's for me and the chief exec to advise the chair. And I'm hoping, given how things used to work, when we're all physically present, then there'll be a perfectly kind of common sense way of dealing with those kind of issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Right. So we will be keeping an eye on the situation. We'll get further information through the monitor officer and John, and whatever we get, it'll go out to all members. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, I think so. I think if there's any more to update anybody, then we'll send it around to all members. I think at this stage, and like for today's meeting, we just need to be clear on we're happy with the process that we've got in place, that we've got checks and balances in place to make sure that we've got a full audit of the decisions that come in, which we have, and that we don't want to tinker with that process because I think it works really well at the minute.
Right. You all happy?
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, so now I'll go on to the next item, which is item 6, minutes of the last meeting held on the 6th of September. Somebody move them.
I'll move them, Chair.
Thank you. And then item 7, date of the next meeting, which is the 17th of January. Right, it's another year gone. Right. Thank you very much for your attendance. If I don't see you before, have a good Christmas, and I'll see you in the new year.
The C word already.
Yes, yeah.
Might suit tonight, you never know.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you
You
very much
will.
indeed.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.